Greetings, listenership. Welcome to TLC, Tropical Literature Creatives, the podcast where we interview authors of Caribbean heritage about themselves and about their literary works. We not only interview the ones that you've heard of, but we also interview the ones who you'll be hearing about soon enough. One of those persons is Catherine Dorsette. Catherine, welcome to Tropical Literature Creatives.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for having me. I feel really honored.
Well, the honor is all ours to interview an author like yourself, Catherine.
Oh, thanks.
For those who aren't acquainted with you, what Caribbean islands do you share heritage with?
Well, originally from the nature island of the Caribbean, which is Dominica, but I currently reside on the Emerald Isle of the Caribbean, which is Montserrat.
I like how you describe them there. You know, the Nature Isle and Emerald Isle. I like that.
Yep.
Did you face any challenges in terms of transitioning from one island to the next, or is it that the cultures are so similar that the transition was seamless?
The transition was seamless actually. And the only challenge that I faced, if one could even call it a challenge, was just that during December, Christmas seemed to get a little lost because they're actually festivities that carnival, and that is actually the major festival on the island, and it happens in December. And I have never had that before. December has always been just Christmas time, so that would probably just be the little challenge. But other than that, it is very much like Dominica in terms of friendly people, the peace and quiet, and the landscape. There are places that I go to and I think I'm back home. So
Ah,
it was really easy. Transition was really easy.
and that sounds so much like Trinidad as you mentioned it, because in Trinidad, Carnival is usually celebrated late January, around February or so. I think this year it may be in March. So by the time persons are able to listen to this recording. However, even though there's a build up to Carnival, you know, there are one or two fetes or parties that are advertised, you know, in the latter part of the year. Um, on Boxing Day, December 26th, that is when a lot of major radio stations start belting out soca songs so that persons who are there, there is no doubt that Carnival is right around the corner. So in that regard, yeah, that the Caribbean islands are similar.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for those who aren't acquainted with yourself, we know, well, we have learned that you're quite the established self-published author. How many books have you published so far?
I'm actually published 12, and the last book in my trilogy, A Woman Like Us, will be my 14th book, my 14th publication.
Okay. Tropical Literature Creatives, we are acquainted with some of your works because we would have featured it on the Caribbean Book of the Day segment. We would have featured Fires of Montserrat, Jordan, and very soon we should be featuring, there's another one called Anthology and another called Will You Remember Me? These books, they have different genres. When it is that you're putting them together, was it that challenge to switch between genres, like from romance to poetry, or was it a challenge at all?
Well, actually, for Will You Remember Me Tomorrow, that came about, I think, somewhere in 2018 or 2019. They were
Hmm.
celebrating Alzheimer's month of mental health. And I
Oh,
thought I would write something just to commemorate the occasion. But I took a different slant because normally you hear of the persons suffering from the disease do not recognize their close ones, their loved ones. And I thought I would just tweak it a little bit and have the man pretend to remember his daughter just so she wouldn't feel so bad.
oh,
And it was very well received because she was so excited her father had finally remembered her. But he was thinking, well, I'm not her father. But if she thinks I'm her father, okay, I'll just pretend. She
oh,
was happy. He was happy, but actually he didn't remember her.
oh no, that is such a, I mean, when you think about that story, it is really gripping. I mean, oh my goodness.
Yeah, these were the reviews I got. People thought it was really capturing, just captivating, yes.
No, I am so sorry I haven't gotten to this book. I said I can just imagine this as a movie with a plot twist, you know, at the end, you know. He really, that just that's how you describe it. This is wild. I think I got to get myself a copy of this.
Actually, I was so ambitious that my son his wife and my granddaughter, we actually did a 6-minute reel based on the book. Will you remember me tomorrow?
Oh, well, you have to send me that link so we can feature it in the notes at the bottom of this interview.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you seem really invested and involved in writing because, as you said, for World's Alzheimer's Day, you put this together. Tell us a bit about your background in writing. Is it something that you traditionally liked to do? Is it a skill that you would have had to develop over time?
Well, I've never really had a mentor when it came to writing. It actually began when I was very young. My mom couldn't read and write very well, but she always said that she didn't want me to be like her. She wanted me to be bright. So what she did was go to the library and she would bring home discarded books because after a while they discard the books. But because she couldn't read very well, she would take home chemistry books and biology books and so on and bring it home and tell me to read her a story. But obviously there are no stories in these books. So what I did was I made up a story. So every night I made up a story. Now one night she wanted a particular story because she really enjoyed it. But of course I couldn't remember it because I was making it up on the go. So I got a solid beating because she said that was tantamount to lying. And she didn't want me to lie. So by pretending I was reading the story, I was lying. So she said, okay, what to do? She bought me an exercise book. I was about 9.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you know what? Whenever the stories come to mind, write it down. And that is actually how I began to pen the stories. And I
Mm.
haven't stopped since.
Look at that. Look at that. I mean, you could say that
Yeah.
mom would describe it as lying, and we could probably look at it as a creative exercise in fiction. So, you know.
Well, I think she tried that too because she did buy a book and tell me to write them down. But the
Mhm.
fact that I
Yeah.
wasn't actually reading that aspect of it, she didn't take kindly to it.
Oh,
So
she could have just seen like your creative talent from the jump and said, you know what, this young girl has potential. Let's put that to the test. So top credit to your mom for that. I mean,
yes,
I'm not too
indeed.
sure if it was punishment or if it is that she saw potential, but whatever it was, you got set on that path.
Yes, I did. I did.
But you were talking a little while ago when you had mentioned something about a writing group. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, on Facebook, I got an invitation to join a writing group. It was being monitored, or how do you call it, moderated by
Mm-hmm.
another writer. So I joined, and as the days passed, I realized I was really interested. She would post a prompt, whether she created it herself or got it on Facebook or from any other place. She would
Mm-hmm.
post it, and within the week, we had to write something on it. And
Ah.
it was so exciting that from the minute she posted it, I had a story for it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I kept looking towards those things. And interestingly, at the time, I wasn't really into any particular genre. I just wrote on the prompts. But she had all kind of prompts. There was folklore, there was romance, there was thriller, detective, there was murder, there was everything you could think of. And the prompts just kept coming and I kept writing. Now, towards the 30th week or so, when people started to fall away and not too many people were contributing, so I thought, you know what? I am going to take all of my 20 plus short stories that I wrote for the prompts with the reactions from the other persons in the group and put it into a book. And I did. And that's how anthology of wiki writing prompts came about.
Now that.
So it,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it captured all of the stories that I got from the prompts
Ah, no, that is
with
it.
the reactions.
No, that is interesting. And it's really a creative way that the book came about. So what you're saying is that it's a compilation, the exercises or the challenges that you would have gotten while you were part of this writing group.
Yes. And I had the creator of the group do the forward for that particular book.
Ah, I, Catherine, I think that you're one of the more creative persons who I've come across. Uh, Even though your work is self-published, I really like the direction that your work takes.
But I try to be different and it just comes. I know people speak about when you're writing, you have to plan it, and I can't do that. If I start planning a story, it just disappears from me. The best way I write, an idea comes to mind. Um, you know, Kevin song that he would make a good policeman, and I run with it. if I stop to plan, and so it gets lost. So I just pick up my pen and I write. I'm not sure how it's going to end, but it happens. And that's how it goes. That's how I write. Every one of my books. I get a prompt or I get an idea or I see a picture and I just write to it.
Okay. I mean, I have to admit, I mean, you sound like a one. There's a quote that I remember reading a long time ago that an entrepreneur is someone who has a problem and who figures out the way to solve it on the way down. I'm not too sure if, being an entrepreneur is one of the things that you specialize in, but it seems that where writing is concerned, once you just get, a premise for a story, your mind is already in motion, figuring out ways to craft and to breathe life into that particular statement that you would have received. And that
Yeah.
is interesting.
That's a special gift I think I have from God. Because that is actually how Fire and Montserrat began.
Ah,
In 2015, we
mm-hmm,
were celebrating 20 years of living for life volcano. Now I'm not into revelry or carnival, and I was wondering, well, how do I participate? How do I commemorate the occasion? I thought, oh well, why not write a book? And so
mm-hmm,
I used the 20 years of volcanic activity as a backdrop for two young lovers who got separated and reunited 20 years later on the island. And when the book came out, it was like, wow, this is great because, of course, demonstrations at home and abroad recognized a lot of the places that I was talking about in the story. And so they wanted more. They fell in love with the character. So I came and I said, okay, I will do Jordan and I'll stop. But they wanted more. And then I said, okay, this is the last one. I made sure I told everybody, this is the last one. A woman like us, and that's it. So I'm actually in the last book. I actually wanted to publish it earlier, but I was waiting for Cast to grow up because it is fiction, but it is partially historical because I'm using the onset of the volcano to present time, and so I had to wait a few years for Cass to grow up, for
Mhm.
Jodie to grow up, which is the daughter that Cass and Jordan has. So now that she's 5 years old, the story is unfolding.
A lot of your books are self-published. Is there a reason you chose to go the route of being a self-published author as opposed to being going to the traditional route for publishing that most persons are
Well,
up to?
actually, all of them are self-published. I started with when I wrote anti-Kate short stories. The title came later, but it's actually some of the stories that I wrote when my mom gave me the exercise book. But although I wrote it from 9 and about when I was 12, I would have had it completed. I actually published it when I was 48 because I didn't know about publishing. I didn't know about. I just love to do it, so I wrote it and I kept it there. And so I published with Author House in the United Kingdom at the time. But I found it to be particularly expensive.
Mhm.
And so I decided, no, I don't think writing is for me. I love it, but if I have to publish it, it's going to, it's going to kill me. And then
Oh,
I was a judge in a short story writing competition. And another adjudicator asked me, well, how is my writing going and so on. And
mhm.
I was telling him how difficult it is financially. And he said, haven't you heard of Create Space? I said, no. And so he gave me the website and I went there. And it was like heaven on earth for me because you get to do everything. You lay out your cover, your settings, everything. You get to do it yourself, of course, unless you want to allow them to do it for you and you pay. Other than that, you do everything yourself and you only pay for the copies that they give you.
Ah,
And that was it for me. It was a whole new world. Within a year, I would write 2 books, or at least every year I wrote a book. And that's how all the other
whoa.
books came along.
What is the name of this website again?
It was Create Space, but now it is KDP Publishing, Kindle
Ah,
Publishing.
whoa. Yeah, my
But
goodness.
it used to be Create Space before.
No, for someone like yourself who writing is a passion, like you said, it was heaven on earth.
It was because you just write, you go in, you upload, you just typeset, you do everything yourself, and you let it go. And that was it. That was it.
So no editors to review, no nothing. You've been doing pretty much everything on your own, like designing
Pretty
covers.
much everything. I did have a retired teacher who was a very good friend of mine. She has passed since, and one or two friends. I made them proofread and so on for me. But
Mhm.
I've never really had a publisher. That is why I've always wanted to have a traditional publisher because I think these are the services I would get, and it wouldn't cost me an arm and a leg or my home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it has never really come through. I've got some rejection letters, but I didn't let that stop me. I just kept writing. And I'm hoping one of these days, you know, they will come across one of my books and it's like, hey, why haven't I heard about this woman before? And then they'll take it up.
When it is that they do here, I think they would be pleasantly surprised, judging by the stories that you'd have mentioned. Those things are I can't put a word to describe them. All I know is that those are books that capture your attention. They're very, very creative.
I do my best because I really love the art.
Yeah.
I love the play on words, you know. I just love it.
Where self-publishing is concerned, who taught you what it is that you know, or was it that you taught yourself?
Self-publishing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Well, when you go to create space, they explain everything to you. You either pay them to do it for you, or they tell you, okay, this is what you need to do if you want to get a book, and then you just do it yourself. And since I couldn't pay them, I took the instructions, I laid out my page, I did the font that they wanted, the spacing that they wanted, the margins that they wanted, and I had the stories, I uploaded them, and they have a lot of resources for covers. So you just choose one that is as close as possible to the story that you're trying to tell,
mm-hmm,
and you have a complete book. You have it right there.
mm-hmm. With the things that you have learned now, have you found yourself in a position to teach or relay this information to others? Because I know some persons, they think that self-publishing is something that requires time, study, or it's not for them. And if it's as simple as you see that it is, have you found yourself involved in like workshops or online sessions telling persons, here's what self-publishing is not all that hard. You go there, you do this, X, Y, Z, that kind of thing.
Well, I have done some presentation at the schools. I recently had a creative writing competition with our first formers, and we had some winners. And I have done some, I think one or two interviews with TDN Radio. It's with Anthony. I forget his surname, but
Mm-hmm.
he was very, very supportive at TDN Radio. He was going through a series of Dominican writers, and he had me on for several occasions. And I told him I told the audience how I got started to create space and how easy it was. And I have had occasion to also do that with other local authors talking about it.
Okay. I mean, interesting. You mentioned that you had like engaged schools to have creative writing competitions. Has anyone used like your literature for teaching purposes, whether to help with reading, with writing, or with drama, or with topics that you touch on in any of your books to help convey it to students?
No, they haven't. They have had it in their exhibitions when they have in school reading exhibition. My books are always in it, but they haven't actually used my work for anything in particular.
How would you feel if it were to be adopted? In particular, will you remember me? Because again, this is just my opinion. There are a number of topics that I don't think that young persons are sensitized to, and we as adults are kind of to blame in the sense that we think they're too young, they shouldn't listen to this, or they shouldn't hear this, or they're not ready for this, or they should focus on other things. But I think topics like mental illness, for example, like finances are another example, are things that young persons should at least be exposed to. And if it is that if it strokes their interest, it's something that they could be a bit more invested in. Now, having said all that entire thing there, well, I get back to my original question. How would you feel if it is that your book, and in particular, Will You Remember Me, were to be adopted by a school, one organization to help convey to convey persons' experiences or to teach persons simply reading and writing and
Well, I would be humbled and honored at the same time because I think it's a very good topic that persons can really, because it's so wide. You can write so much about mental health, you know, the sad part, the parts, and what makes it a good topic is every one of us on this earth, whether we are challenged physically or not, we have some, how do you call it? It's not a defect, but we all get sad sometimes. we all get depressed. We all feel oppressed at one point in our life or the other. And if those things are not handled properly, if our coping mechanisms are not reinforced, we're not getting positive affirmations, we can become mentally ill. So whichever way you look at it, it actually touches everybody. And if we write about it, if we promote it, if we get people sensitive to the fact that mental illness is out there and mental health can be achieved, whichever way it helps them to look at it, it would really be an honor for me.
Okay, excellent to hear. You had also mentioned creative writing competitions. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, what happened was um, every year we have the first formers leaving um, primary school to go into secondary school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not sure how it may be elsewhere, but at Montserrat, in our primary schools, you have the one teacher who teaches all of the subjects.
Mm-hmm.
In secondary school, you have a teacher for every subject. So it's a lot more work, different faces, and they really have to get used to so it's like a culture shock. You know what I mean? It's like migrating to someplace totally unfamiliar. So what we did, the first week of orientation, Miss Shirley Osborne, who was the former Speaker of the House of Assembly on Montserrat. She's a really socially active person. She
Mm-hmm.
asked me if I would do something on creative writing for the young persons. And I said, okay. I wasn't sure yet, how I would present it. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I got there, after just a little interaction, and I asked a few questions, I realized, they were on the ball. So I gave them a little challenge. And the challenge was in 50 to 100 words, write a short story about when you woke up this morning to being here at this present time. And you wouldn't believe some of the stories I got. I mean, they were so creative. Some persons went to bed and woke up like a prince, and another one woke up like a princess. Then there was this rich businessman. I mean, they were so creative. It was hard actually choosing the three winners. So I chose the three winners, and I also chose three honorable mentions, and we got them gifts and everything, which we are going to be presented at a gala that is coming up soon that Miss Osborne is working on. So
Ah,
it does very good.
man, that sounds I really like how it is that this activity that you have that you're able to engage young persons. And that's a real challenge, and I'm not too sure how many persons are aware of it. A lot of persons who have had on this program, they make statements like people don't like to read anymore. Because in some
No, you
instances,
have to make it exciting and they will love it because everything they do has read it. Even the text scene, they have to read, they have to write. But you just have to make it creative for them. Make it something that they can write about. If you go into the classroom and tell them to write 50 words, 100 words about the financial state of Montserrat or climate change, as important as that is, they are not into it because as far as they are concerned, for now, it's not really affecting them. But you tell them to write a story about them waking up this morning to know it's all about them. They can be whoever they want, so they can create. So it always starts with the person himself or herself. At least for me, that's how writing starts. You write with what you know, and then you research and you go further afield. But it always starts with you.
mm-hmm. No, and I think that you should be given, a respect for being involved in this way in the community. Because obviously, I'm not too sure if persons would realize this right now, but when you have a population of young persons who are who are educated or who are engaged like that, it positively benefits the country and by extension the Caribbean. Uh, so again, hats off to you. You've done a lot of self-publishing work, and when you do that, you're a self-published author. You could probably correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of it, in a sense, it comes out of your pocket. So my question is, if it is that you were to find yourself in a school, in a classroom, and a young person were to say, "Ma'am, we know that you're quite an established writer. You've been writing for a very long time. Can I look to becoming a writer as a full-time job to support my family, etc.?" What would you give to someone who would ask you a question like that?
Well, I would tell them they can do whatever they said they had to, but I'd have to be honest with them to tell them it may not be as easy as it seems. Because right now, I would love to be a full-time writer and put my all into it and see how far it takes me. But I am employed full-time with the government, and I write every day still, but I'm not a full-time writer. And I would probably tell that young person, do some research first. You want to write, this is great, because this is your passion. So if this is what you want to do, go for it. But you have to know, just writing a book, and no matter how good it is, unless you really go out there and promote it, you have to market it. Otherwise, you're just going to be having a very good book that nobody knows about, which is what actually happens with me. I think my books are great, and those persons who read it, they say it's great. But because it's not marketed, because it's not published, because it's not promoted very widely, although it's on so many websites and book sites and all kind of sites you can think of, because Amazon does a really, really great job with promotions. But nobody knows who Catherine Dorsette is. So it's not like they're going to look for Catherine Dorsette because they know she can write. For example, you hear about Sidney Sheldon, and you know right away that was one of the greatest writers in the world. But then when you hear about Catherine Dorsette, who is she? Where is she from? So that is not known yet. So that takes marketing, it takes a lot of promotion, and of course, that takes funds. So I would tell the young person, go for it, but be prepared. If anything, write the story, tune it to the best that it can be, promote it, do a before, do an after for the publication, and see how far it goes. See if you can get support. Probably you might need to take a small loan or have your parents help you, but you definitely need to promote and market for it to get out there. It can be done.
You mentioned a lot of things there, and I'm just curious. I'm not too sure how things are in Montserrat. In Montserrat, in your experience, or even in Dominica, do you see that, like the state, the government sees right? Are there things in place to help encourage persons who write? Like, if you go to our bookstore, is there a section for local writers? Is there like a grant, like you said, take a loan for persons to treat writing as such, to fund their writings, etc.? Is there anything like that in place in your experience?
On Montserrat, no. In Dominica, I know when I went home in 2014, after I had done the launch here, I went to Dominica to launch because I just had to do something in my country as well.
Mm-hmm.
I met with the permanent secretary of education, Miss Powell. She has since passed. She was impressed with the books because I did these 3 books: Anti-Cat Short Stories, The Wolf of a Man, and Youth Power. And she was so impressed that she said, in support, what they're going to do, they're going to order all 3 books, a set of books for each of their primary schools, and there are about 80 primary schools. So she worked with an agent that I found down there, and they ordered the books, and the books are in each of the primary schools. I have seen it in the library, the Grand Bay Library. I've seen it online as books that they have. So that was support. The only thing with that though is there wasn't any I didn't make anything on it because it would have been too expensive and they would not have taken it. So to purchase the books and then have them shipped to Dominica, that just took everything. I was just happy knowing that the books were in Dominica, but I didn't make anything from it. But I'm thinking, okay, if it is there, persons are reading it, they will want more. So then when that comes up again, the transaction will be better. But I am glad to know that at least my books are at home, and in Montserrat, most of my books are at the public library as well. I have had some there. The chief librarian, whenever my book comes out, she buys a couple and she displays it in the library. So that is the support there. But apart from that, um, there are business grants, um, but not too much on the creative side. I think the creative side is, as much as they appreciate it, the support, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, is not really there. Because one of the reasons I say that is because when I came out to fire on Montserrat, the government had sent me to St. Lucia because I had gotten an invitation to the PIF, which is the Peter International Film Festival. And I had gotten an award there as well. And it was for Fire on Montserrat. We had done a short clip that we actually shot it there. We used Jerry LeBron, wonderful young man who did the work. And government sponsored my trip. So the support was there. But when I came back, notwithstanding the reviews and the acceptance of well the book was received, I couldn't get a cent to put a production team together. It was just it doesn't seem viable to anybody. So that's how it is.
Okay.
It's easy to say yes, and then when you say, okay, if you like it so much and you think it is so good, look, let us do, and then the story changes. But it will change eventually, I guess.
And I would admit it is very interesting to just know how things are in different countries. I mean, my opinion is that, and this is just my opinion, I think it's just really exciting literature, and it could be used as a tool in tourism. I mean, we were talking before, and we were talking about the different literary festivals. What's the literary festival in Montserrat? What's the name of it?
Is the Montserrat Aliogana Literary Festival.
Exactly. And I mean, that's a reason for tourism persons come to the island for reasons such as this. And I'm just thinking that that events like this can be marketed, can be promoted in such a way to build and to grow. And it would benefit the country on the whole and also writers in particular. But I
Well, they
mean,
actually do, because they launch new authors and establish authors. They do invite persons locally and persons from abroad.
look at that. Look at that. Well, let's just monitor and see how things go.
Yes.
All right. Well, we're getting to the end of our interview at this point in time. Is there anything that you'd like to leave with us at this point in time, Catherine?
Well, what I'd like to share is actually my latest book, the one just before Cast, because I was writing them both together. It's called The Adventures of Moss and Fling. Moss is a mosquito and Fling is
Mhm.
a fly. And and they met. And I have used these two seemingly insignificant pests to try to touch on some societal issues like drinking alcohol, disobedience to parents, and even dying. And at the end of every story, I have a section of comprehensive questions. So it's like comprehension. And then
Mhm.
after the comprehension, there is a composition where they are allowed to use the salient points of the story to rewrite a summary of what they learned. So it's a learning tool. So there are 5 stories in the book. And so there are 5 sets of comprehension questions and 5 sets of composition that will help. Because what I am thinking is the best way to know that you've learned something is when you can share it with somebody else. So if you've learned
Exactly.
the story and you've learned the salient points of the story, unless you can actually tell somebody else what the story was about or what it is that you've learned about the mosquito or about the fly, you really haven't learned it. So that was the basis for it.
Hmm.
Trying to I have spoken to one person in St. Kitts, and he's actually speaking to the permanent secretary of education over there. They're trying to do something in the book, so I'm just keeping my fingers crossed. I have spoken to the chief librarian, and so we are in discussions. So soon we will find out how it's going to be. But I think it's a great book for private school for ages 5 to 12 thereabouts.
I, I mean, Catherine, I am impressed by your creativity, not just in the storytelling, but in the field of or in the area of education. And we look forward to when it's out. I mean, let us know. And we at Tropical Literature Creatives are eager to promote your work in this particular field.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I will.
Okay. All right. Well, Catherine, well, thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed by us. And we wish for you success in your undertakings. One of the things that you had mentioned is when promoting your books was being done, it couldn't have been done to the fullest. And as a consequence, you have a lot of good books, a lot of good stories, but persons don't know much about your books or about Catherine Dorsette. And we hope that at Tropical Literature Creatives, through promoting your works, etc., that persons get the opportunity to hear some of the stories that you
Yeah,
have written. And
that's my dream.
and we
And I
hope that
thank Tropical Literature Creatives for the opportunity to work with them. And I just thank you for the opportunity of sharing my work with the world because you do have a wide audience. And I'm just grateful.
and we are eager and we're happy and we are appreciative that you have trusted us to do this. So yeah, Catherine, well, again, thank you very much, and we will be in
Attention
touch. You
Caribbean
take
authors and creators. Are you looking to elevate your literary journey? This is Kevin George, your host and presenter from TLC Tropical Literature Creatives, and I'm thrilled to share an exciting opportunity with you. Introducing our bespoke promotional services designed exclusively for authors of Caribbean heritage. Whether you're a seasoned professional or a rising star, we're here to amplify your voice. From getting the word out about your book launch, your self-publishing services, or workshops, to sharing services that you offer to fellow authors and creatives. Visit our website or reach out to us today to explore how we can tailor our expertise to showcase your literary brilliance. Let's unlock the next chapter of success together. You've been listening to TLC, Tropical Literature Creators. If you've heard something of interest or something you like, reach out to us. Reach out to our authors. Follow us on social media. We look forward to hearing from you.